Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the Dungeon Dive, we are going to be taking a look at Return of the Heroes, an overland adventure game that, upon first look, appears to be much older than it actually is. Just by looking at the components and some of the quality of the art, and maybe the shape of the box and the tiles, you might think that this is some long-lost relic from the 1980s, but in reality, it is only from 2004. So it does have this really old look, but it's not quite as old as you might think. Let's take a look at the box here. So the box is kind of an unusual size. I do like that board game boxes have become more standard size as of late, but let's take a look at the back here. So this says, Return of the Heroes. Experience exciting adventures in a fantastic world. Return of the Heroes is more than a game. It is your tale. You play a talented but inexperienced character. This will change during your adventures. You experience the progression of your heroes. The game is your portal to the fantastic worlds of elves, dwarves, mages, fighters, and clerics. Experience exciting adventures in the capital and the surroundings, barter on the markets of Zenda, fight against giants, trolls, and other dark enemies. Eventually, you have to overcome the cruel Nameless and his tower, and you will return a hero. So, Return of the Heroes is an overland crawl adventure game. I would kind of put this in the same arena as a game like Talisman or Prophecy, perhaps Runebound and Pauper's Ladder. It is probably my least favorite of all of those, but I think it does do some things pretty well, and I think it can exist alongside those games in a collection. However, I would not spend a lot of money on it. There is a tendency to sometimes look at these older games, these kind of older under the radar games, as hidden gems. And I often find that when somebody posts something about a game like this on the Dungeon Dive Facebook group, there's a big explosion of excitement around it. Like, oh my God, like what is this old game? Oh my gosh, it looks so cool. Should I buy it? And then people go to eBay and they see prices ranging. I've seen it anywhere from down to $30 to upwards to $100. And in this kind of game, I always tell people to temper their expectations. Not everything that is old is a hidden gem, although some are. And not every old game is deserving of its kind of cult status. And I'm really not sure if Return of the Heroes does deserve a cult status or not. It does some neat things, and I think if you could find the game for about $40, I think that's a good price. Maybe $50 might be pushing it, but I definitely would not spend a lot of money on this game. I think you could invest money into your hobby through better means. But the game has a historically terrible rulebook, and the rules are really kind of crazy in this game. It's a pretty simple game, but they have divided the rules up into an introductory game setup. So some of the stuff you need is here. Some of the stuff you need is in the book of rules, and some of the stuff you need is in the glossary. And then there's also a condensed rules page. So there are a lot of ways, a lot of things to read and learn what is really a quite simple game. And the main problem with the rulebook is it is written in a conversational tone between the characters, and it makes learning the game a lot more difficult than it needs to be. For instance, in this section on movement, and he said, thanks again. I'm not so sure about your comment about the fighter. Us dwarves are rich and tough, and although we're perhaps a bit slow, a cart can easily take care of this problem. So they're kind of like inferring, hinting that a cart can improve your movement. Oh yeah, cart. That reminds me of my topic, movement. Okay, on each of your character sheets is an image of a footprint with the number in it. That is the number of fields you can move in a turn. or your movement allowance. Dwarves like me can only move 2 fields per turn, but as a result, we get to see more of the countryside. Then as it switches back and forth between different sections, it'll also switch between different characters like they're having a conversation. It's not terribly written, and in some ways, I kind of appreciate what they did. It's kind of cool. It's unique, but it also makes learning the game way more difficult than it needs to. And I'm really happy that you can really learn the game through the introductory setup, and you can easily remember the game or relearn the game in between plays using the condensed rules. And anything that you need to look up, you can look up in this glossary. And this is actually a really handy thing that a lot of games like this could use, and that is a very detailed explanation of all of the encounters, of all of the chits, of all of the different things in alphabetical order. So I really do appreciate this glossary. The rulebook could use some help, and I don't like that things are split up between different documents. It just makes it more difficult than it needs to be. But what kind of game is Return of the Heroes? In Return of the Heroes, you are going to be playing as some adventurers. I usually like to play a couple heroes and go off and just kind of have a very kind of low-key, casual playthrough, not super competitive. And you are going to be taking characters. So on this game here, I am playing as the cleric and the elf. And you have different stats like magic, ranged, and melee combat. You have a different blue tracks here, blue spaces here where you can keep track of different quests that you're on. You have these yellow spaces here where you can equip items and get artifacts and that kind of thing. And the stat system is pretty easy. Each of your magic, ranged, or melee combat skills will have a number, and you have to roll under that, that number or under on 2 dice. As you gain experience, you will gain dice that you can add to your pool, and then you can select the lowest values. And also, as you gain certain items and artifacts and powers, you can also change your value. So right now, this staff here is allowing my cleric to go from a 6 to a 7 in his magic total. At the beginning of the game, each of the characters is going to be dealt a couple of heroic deeds. And these are the quests that you have to do in order to unlock a magic stone that will give you access to the Nameless's temple up here. And that is the big bad. And he will be coming out at a certain point in the game. And then you have to complete your heroic deed in order to get one of the magic stones. And once you have a magic stone, you can gain access to the Nameless's temple, and you can do battle with him and try to win the game. So I play with a couple of various house rules. One of the main issues with this game is it can take a very long time. And that's mainly because the chits that you need, the tokens that you need to complete your quests, are all randomly put in this bag along with some other tokens. And so at certain points during the game, you're going to be drawing tokens out of this bag, and you will be placing those on the board at predetermined locations, because some of them will have these coordinates like J8, and J8 will go on the number 8 spot on tile J. And these are all tiles. There are 16 different tiles, so you can rearrange the board. Each time you play the game, you can have the board be completely different. That is kind of cool. And I also like the fact that some of the tiles are going to go out on predetermined locations. So there is a sense of a world existing. And then there are also these random tiles that get placed out on the board at the beginning of the game in various spots. And so the game has cool randomized encounters to make the game feel different each time. But it also has a number of encounters that go on the same spots. So as you play the game more, you can get a sense of this world that exists. For instance, this dragon teeth, which are part of a task, part of a quest, they are always going to appear on D9 up there in the D region. Sometimes you will find these random green things. These are like events that can happen. These are different non-combat encounters, like a teleporter, or maybe you can encounter a beggar, or you might come across a boat that can help you get across the river or the lake there, and various markets that are going to appear around the board. But one of the house rules I play with to speed up the game is I take 2 heroic deeds per character. You only need to complete 1 to gain access to the end fight. And in a regular game, you put all of your tokens that you are using into the bag. I only put the tokens from the heroic deeds that I have drawn into the bag. So that way I have a better chance of drawing only those heroic deeds. I don't put all of the heroic deed chips into the bag. So I lessen the dilution of the chips in the bag to make the game faster. However, to offset that, I put a number of these servants. So these servants, these are kind of like the nameless, his generals. And in a standard game, these are put into the bag at about halfway through the game. But what I do is I take 4 or so, depending on kind of like the difficulty level I want to play at. I choose 4 of these. That's what I did for this game. And I put those into the bag at the beginning of the game to kind of offset the fact that I'm going to be finding my quests faster. So there are actually a lot of ways that you can make this game faster. You can make the game harder. The rules are pretty simple, and there are many opportunities for house rules in this game, just like there are in games like Runeterra and Talisman. And so that is something, if you appreciate, kind of twisting a game to fit your ideal play style, this can be a cool game for that. And it does give a pretty good sense of adventure. It is kind of fetch quest the game. So a lot of the things you are doing is you are going to one location. So for instance, my cleric here, he has a quest where I need to find the Book of Curses. And the Book of Curses is a relic that is placed in the bag at the beginning of the game. And then I need to take that Book of Curses to the temple. And if I do that, I get a magical cross that is on the flip side of the Book of Curses. And the temple is a location over here. And so I need to take that Book of Curses up to the temple. My elf right now, she needs to find a crystal and bring it back to the elves. And if I do that, I get a magic bow. I have this escort quest here where I need to take this monk over to the monastery. And so the way the quests work, I think, is pretty cool because they all coincide to various locations on this map. In that sense, it is kind of like Hexplorit. I wonder if the guys who created Hexplorit, if they maybe played this game many years ago and used that as kind of a launching off point, because it does have that kind of, that lineage. I think you can draw a direct lineage from a game like this to Hexplorit, and it does give a small kind of a feel like Hexplorit. I think Hexplorit is a much better game, and that should also kind of be lumped into to this group of games. But this game is also a much easier game to get into, and I could see this being a good introductory game to a kind of more advanced overland crawl like Hexplorit. There are also a number of items that you can purchase when you go to the market. You're going to draw a certain number of items at random. So you can get some bows for armor. You can get different kinds of weapons or different types of armor that will help you take more hits. You can get boots and horses and carts that can allow you to move more. Then at the beginning of the game, you're also going to randomly draw one of the nameless ones. So you don't know who you are going to be fighting at the end of the game. There is a chance in one of the encounters with a little mice, and you can ask the mice to spy on the nameless one so you can take a glimpse at the card, which is kind of cool. And there are various nameless ones here, like the deep ones, the shadows, the black knight, the six-armed goddess, the warlock, and the demon. So you never know who you're going to fight at the end of the game. You do have this nameless token here. And once one of the major quests, one of these heroic deeds, Once the first part is completed, then you add the nameless token into your bag. And then when the nameless token gets drawn, it goes all the way up there to his temple. And then also, there are 4 major guardians, and these guardians have different stats for each one, and they are going to surround the temple as guards for the nameless. And you have to defeat one of these guys before you can challenge the nameless one to the final duel to try to win the game. So yeah, it's a very simple game. I think it does a good job of creating a sense of adventure. Like I said, I love the random elements, how they go out and how they will create a new game each time. But then there's also offset by those encounters that always end up in the same place to give the world a sense of a kind of history in a way. And there is some cool things going on in the game. It's not great. Again, it's not something that I would say go out and like find a copy at any price you can find it. The prices really aren't going up a lot, which is nice. They have stayed about the same since this is actually the second copy. It is kind of weird. So I guess it is kind of hypocritical. This is actually kind of the second copy I have owned. I bought this game when it was fairly new. I think I bought it first in like 2005 or so because I was looking for a game like this. My buddy bought Runebound, or we bought Runebound and this around the same time, I think. And we ended up liking Runebound a lot more. And then I sold this at one point, and I ended up rebuying it just because I felt like it needed to be part of my collection as part of that kind of overworld exploration style game. It's not great, but it can be fun, especially if you like to tinker with house rules. I think the game does excel if you kind of treat it like a little RPG and add some of your own personal flair to it. There is also an expansion called Under the Shadow of the Dragon. And this is a somewhat interesting expansion in that it works as a standalone game, as a 2-player game, but you can also combine the elements of this game into a base game of Return of the Heroes. So the Under the Shadow of the Dragon, a terrible dragon has been terrorizing your homeland for quite some time. Who will be able to confront this creature of eternity? Courage alone will not be enough to win the battle. Ancient scrolls hold the secret of how to make a mighty magic weapon. It is not until you have equipped yourself with such a special artifact that you may take your quest of bringing the creature's reign of terror to an end. So yeah, like I said, this is a 2-player game that is standalone, but it can also be incorporated into the base game. Now, both of these games also come with dedicated solo modes, and that was actually pretty cool back in the day, the early 2000s. A lot of these games didn't have solo rules, and so we just kind of had to make them up on our own. However, the solitaire game is only okay. It's a timed track where you just have 45 turns to take down the nameless. And then depending on how good you do, you get a certain number of points at the end of the game. There are a couple little tweaks to the rules to make it play a little better solitaire. So even though the solitaire version isn't great, I do give major props to this game for thinking about that, back in 2004. That's, pretty forward thinking. And I just like to play, when I play solo, I just play a couple of heroes and I have those heroes compete to see which one wins. And right now my cleric is having a great time while my elf is not. And that kind of does exemplify one of the problems with these kinds of super random games. A lot of times when you play them with friends, you have one friend who is just getting beat up the entire game. They're having terrible encounters. They're failing all of their dice rolls. They're not drawing cool weapons. They're not drawing cool quests. And then one friend is just having an absolute blast, drawing all the quests they need, getting all the weapons, rolling great. And that is totally what is happening right now. My cleric is having a grand old time, and my elf is kind of floundering as she's stumbling across the land trying to find the things that she needs. But yeah, this is just a quick look at an older game, Return of the Heroes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.